Okay, turning the page to page 2. This, for many of you, we might consider this the most important page on your syllabus because it shows all of our learning objectives outlined basically on one page. This is everything we're going to try and learn for the course. So it's broken down into 3 categories. The first category is to demonstrate clear and critical thought. And we will practice this in 5 different ways. So first of all, to demonstrate your clear and critical thought, you're going to write 3 essays. Altogether, it will be about 6,000 to 8,000 words. So we're really aiming for around 2,500 words per essay. And those essays are going to summarize, analyze, synthesize the materials that we have in the course and materials that you research on your own in order to persuasively define, interpret, evaluate, advocate, or refute ideas and concepts. So if we break it down just to understand the course material and course concepts a little bit better, summarize, you will probably remember from English 122, where you're kind of repeating in your own words the main ideas. Analyze is where you're digging deeper, so you're applying a little bit of creative and critical thought. So when you're analyzing something, you're inferring about the underlying assumptions that this author may have been acting upon. You're creatively thinking about the extended implications or the consequences that might follow from some kind of thoughts or ideas. Synthesize materials means to bring materials from different sources together as though they're sort of in one conversation about a topic. So synthesis is, you bring from different sources and you put it together. So in your essay, of course, you'll be using multiple different kinds of sources, all geared toward one topic and one point. And then you'll do that in order to persuasively define. So maybe you'll want to clarify and define what a concept means. What are the different parts of this concept? How can we understand it clearly and fully? Interpret. So to interpret is to sort of unpack the layers of meaning. So the denotation or the surface layer meaning, as opposed to the connotation or the sort of implied cultural subjective meaning. So interpret is to unpack those layers of meaning. Evaluate is a kind of a synonym for judge or critique. So you're kind of saying if something is good or bad, if it's right or wrong. You're saying how valuable it is and why. Advocate or refute. So either you agree or disagree with a certain idea or concept. So that's a lot of skills that we'll practice, and we're going to break them into three different essays. And of course, some of these skills are going to overlap in all of the papers, but those are the big main skills that we want to learn by the end of this course. Secondly, distinguish and use both denotative and connotative features of language. So that's just being able to tell the difference between the dictionary objective levels of meaning and then those cultural subjective, more fluid levels of meaning. Distinguish and use both deductive and inductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning is going to be sort of where you begin with an assumption or an opinion, or you might even call it a conclusion, but you begin with an idea and then you do research in order to prove that idea. Whereas inductive reasoning is more like you gather up a whole bunch of evidence and details, and then you try and look at the patterns that move across all of that body of evidence, and then you finally arrive at your conclusion, or you arrive at your opinion or your claim. So deductive reasoning is kind of like you start with your hypothesis and then you seek to prove it. Whereas inductive reasoning is more like you gather up the evidence and then you distill a hypothesis out of it. Draw sound inferences from data given in a variety of forms. So we'll look at mainly text data, like language data, but sometimes it'll be verbal language. Most of the time it'll be written language. We'll also look at images, videos, sounds, colors, shapes, symbols, and we'll look at that kind of data. So you'll want to be able to infer, so basically inferring the underlying assumptions, thinking about the extended consequences, unpacking the layers of meaning from all of that data in those variety of forms. And then finally, for demonstrate clear and critical thought, apply some of the classical divisions of rhetorical appeal. So many of you will already be familiar with those classical categories, which are logos, ethos, and pathos. So we will dig deeper into those, talk about the way they work as appeals, as, like strategies for convincing your readers to sort of accept your viewpoints. And we'll also talk about the fallacies of logos, ethos, and pathos. So those are like mistakes and manipulation of reasoning. So A, demonstrate clear and critical thought is a huge component of our course. And these are some of our main objectives for that component. Next is B, read and critically evaluate college level material from a variety of sources. So we will identify and analyze the structure of arguments underlying texts. So some of the most common structures are compare and contrast, cause and effect, conditional reasoning, which is saying, if this and this and this, then that and that and that. Also, we have process or sequence reasoning. So things have to happen in this order. We'll get into those in the first unit, and then we will repetitively look for those structures in everything that we study. Distinguish facts and factual statements from opinions and judgmental statements. So basically just telling the difference between fact and opinion. Discover, evaluate, and integrate outside sources to develop your writing. So finding sources, making sure that they're valuable for your topic, and embedding them smoothly into your argument. Appraise the role of symbols and symbol systems in the development of meaning. So just looking at the way language does function symbolically to create meaning, but also visual symbols or even maybe gestures or colors can signify layers of meaning. So we'll look at a variety of symbols and how they function toward developing meaning. And finally, C, analyze critical thinking in the arts and sciences. Evaluate the validity and soundness of arguments. So we're going to learn a kind of standard set of criteria that you can use to check to see if something is valid and sound. And then you can apply that checklist to the ideas that you study. Identify common formal and informal fallacies of language and thought. So we'll learn a whole bunch of fallacies, and then pretty much whichever ones really stand out to you guys, you'll be searching for and identifying those fallacies in a variety of sources. And then last of all, identify and avoid some of the deliberate abuses and manipulations of rhetoric. So abuse and manipulation of rhetoric is those fallacies. So whether it's logical fallacies or authoritative fallacies or emotional fallacies, we will learn them and we will find them and we will try to avoid them in our own writing. So those are the big key components of our course. If you have any questions about those, or if you'd like some clarification on maybe what some of those keywords mean, please use the replies below so that we can get a better understanding of these official learning objectives as we begin this course.